BTB listeners, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Listen, if this episode inspires you, do me a favor, take 5 seconds to shoot me a like and subscribe to the podcast. There are several more exciting guests that are in the pipeline, and I just can't thank you enough for your continued support, and let's keep paying the mission forward.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Coleman Gerhardt. A former athlete and motivational coach, I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living all my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a...
I remember growing up as a kid being able to go to my gymnasium and pick up a beaded jump rope and just absolutely get into some reps. And at the time when I was a kid, I had no idea where that beaded jump rope came from. And today's guest is not only a tremendous mentor of mine, but he is somebody whose dad created the beaded jump rope and is the founder of Monkey Bar Gymnasium and is one of the most inspirational, motivating people I've come across in my life. So I'd like to welcome John Hinds to the BTB Project. Welcome, man.
Thank you, Coleman. It's nice to be on here and be able to catch up and talk with you.
No, absolutely. And I know that it's been a few years since our paths have crossed, and being a Colorado native, I had an opportunity to spend some time as a tennis coach with another mentor, Jeff Salzenstein, who you and him crossed paths when he was on the tour trying to keep his body healthy late in his career. Yeah. And I'd love for you to take us back to that moment of how you came across Jeff and maybe some of the things you were helping him with at that time.
Yeah, sure. Interesting thing about Jeff is he is incredibly goal-oriented, and he really has that 100% athlete mindset. And athletes generally like, just tell me what to do, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And I like to talk about getting people into that athlete mindset, because non-athletes, they'll struggle sometimes, what I see, making a decision that's going to take them to the next level. And that's the difference between athletes that I see, is athletes are like, you want me to do what? Okay, I'm doing it. And it's not like there's a thought, like they're all in and they're going to do it. So Jeff had heard about me, and he came to actually train with me one-on-one for an entire weekend up in Madison. And so what he and I did was I would look at him posturally and break him down and look for his weak links. Because in sport, whether it be basketball or tennis or any lateral speed and agility and then forward speed movement pattern sport, they got to be able to react quickly, whether they're going forward or sideways or whatever. Right. And so what I do is I try and look at them posturally, break them down, then build them back up by in a static position, and then through slow pattern movement, and then accelerate it and then load it. And Jeff was really cool about that. He came in as a professional athlete with an open mind, willing to listen to somebody who, honestly, I'm slightly outside the box in my training methodology. And therefore, a lot of people, especially pro athletes, they have to get clear on why. And so I explain things as logically as I can, and it makes sense. I feel with all my athletes that I train, with the intention of, you got to be in the right position, and then we got to work from there. And he did that. He worked on positioning with me, and then I sent him back to Colorado. Then he came back out a while later, and we worked on upgrading his protocol. And he's a really cool dude in that he will be all in on it, and he did the work. The cool thing is that I don't play tennis. but he was so open to, like, I know movement forward, backwards incredibly well. So what I've always tried to do is I try and get you in the best position. So if he's doing a forehand and his right arm is back like so, I want that position to be connected from his hand through his feet. So there's no glitches in his game. So what I would do is just, can he get to this position without issue? And then can he follow through exactly how he would if he was playing? And then what I did was I said, okay, now who's the best? Because I always want to take, okay, where are you?
Right.
And then who's the best? So we know an optimal level of that. So he picked out a video of Roger.
Yeah, that's right.
And I said, okay, now we videotaped Jeff going through a forehand. And then we looked at Roger going through a forehand and looked at the different setup positions and then the follow through. And then we would analyze, okay, what was the difference? What do you see as a difference? Here's what I see. And then we would go to a backhand, go to his serve, and just do a couple basic shots that he would do in his game. And then also look at his reaction position. So not just when you're hitting the ball, but when you're in a ready position and how quickly you react, forward, left, or right, and backwards. And so all of those positions, we would take a video of where he is and where he wants to be. And then my objective was, how do we get you to move in closer?
Yeah.
And he liked that a lot. And that's basically how I've always done my training. I always look at who's the best jumper, who's the best sprinter, whatever it is, and how do you close the gap between you and them? And so it comes down to positioning, refining your movement pattern, and then speeding that pattern up.
Yeah. I mean, just walking through that with you, John, I mean, you are an expert in this game, and not just the game of tennis, but just athletes and the game of life, right? And whether it's alignment in our body position or alignment with our minds, being in alignment is step one to do anything. And I know Jeff, late in his career, was able to accomplish some amazing things on the world ranks because of that philosophy that you instilled. I want to kind of stay there for a little bit, because this didn't all come out of the blue. I mean, how in the world did you go from a break dancer back in the day, man, to starting to be a strength coach at 16 years old?
Yeah, that's an interesting transition. But I've always been interested in human performance since I was a little kid. My sisters actually just told me when I was 5 or 6 years old, I started jumping up and down like crazy. When I was almost 10, I would obsess with touching the doorway, the door frame. And so I was always obsessed with jumping. And I didn't even remember that. I do remember when I was 13, 14, trying to touch the ceiling and being obsessed about that. And they said, no, you started doing that. As soon as you could jump, you started jumping. And I started that because I just saw, it's funny how we get attracted to certain things when we're little. There was a picture of Dr. J playing for the New York Nets, and he had the ball like this, and his fro was going back, and it was cool. And he had his Fu Manchu mustache, and it was just a really cool picture of him going to dunk the ball. And I got obsessed with dunking. I wanted to dunk so bad, and so that is literally what got me into starting to prep for becoming a strength coach. And because I was obsessed with it, I learned how to take my dad's tubing, tether it to my waist, and I would do running drills like I learned from Russian plyometric books that my dad would bring home from fitness shows when I was like 13 or 14. Then I would do ice skating, like speed skating drills, like I would see Eric Heiden do, who was from Madison, Wisconsin, who was one of the greatest speed skaters ever. And he used my dad's tubing to do resisted skating movements. So I would do that movement. I would do sprint movements like I saw in the plyo books. And those things started to pay dividends. It just so happened that I've always been interested. I've always had a passion for dance, and I've loved dancing since I was a little kid. All my friends, because I grew up in the neighborhoods that I grew up with, all my friends their families, everybody danced around the kitchen table and in their homes, and that was just normal.
Yeah.
So I grew up loving hip hop music, and then when
Yeah.
I was out of high school, I met this dude who we became like brothers. His name was Gregory Velasquez, and he was from Cabrini Green in Chicago. And we literally became like brothers. And we would travel all over Chicago, Milwaukee, New York, going b-boy competitions all over the place. We would do all types of hustles to make our way every way that we went. Because he and I, we didn't have much money, but we might drive to New York and then we would b-boy dance on the streets for money to stay there and eat and stuff like that. And we were always just hustling, and we got really good, and we won contests in New York and Chicago and Milwaukee, and it was real cool. And so I was doing that for quite a while, and I got to meet a lot of the top b-boys in the world at the time. Crazy Legs taught us how to do floor work. Float taught me how to do head spins, which I still, you can see my, so I still got a big old knot on my head from that. But
Right.
it was a great experience for me, actually, as strength training as well, because movement patterns of dance, and then also b-boying is more gymnastics like, but always doing things with a form of rhythm to them is something unique that a lot of strength coaches lose. And because they're so fixated on just straightforward, like clean snatches, push-ups, pull-ups, squats, everything is very straightforward and not diagonal patterning and reactive movement patterning. And so being a b-boy really helped my game as far as being a strength coach as well. And soon after I graduated from college, I got a job out in Los Angeles as a strength coach, or as a personal trainer at the time. And soon after that, I got in front of a couple athletes, and because I've been doing jump training since I was 13, I blew their minds with my knowledge on jump training. And because I'd also could hit my head on the rim, I had a insane vertical jump. I took it from 25 to 47 in 2 years.
Man.
And that's pretty much unheard of, but I did it because I created a very powerful system of jump training. And it goes back to exactly what we were just talking about with Jeff.
Yeah.
As far as refine your form and then start to load it.
Yep.
And that worked for me. And then all that made me blow up when I hit LA was I applied the same thing to all the athletes out here for running, jumping, reacting, and they did fantastic.
Yeah, and that level of creativity, I think, is as we said, the connector. I don't know if you thought I was going to bring up your breakdancing, but
Oh, that's cool.
absolutely is an important milestone in your life, because just as much as you're articulating the why of any imbalances in the body or trying to create alignment, as one of your students, I'm always trying to figure out, how did this all evolve for you? You know,
Yeah.
it's something to me that is truly fascinating, because me being a student, I'm always trying to think outside of the box. And I came from a very regimented, Olympic lifting background. And as you remember, I was very fortunate enough to spend time with you and Jessica, and went through 2 CNT certifications, certified natural trainer, which allowed me to go through your entire program. And the thing that resonated with me the most was, before you put any load on my body, you looked at all the preload, you looked at my biomechanics, you put me into Aishin's yoga, you put me into situations that allowed you to see where the instability was, how to increase it, and then add load. And I really appreciate that. And as I walk through that piece, I'd love for you to talk about the whole evolution of what you're doing with Monkey Bar, because every time, you try to plan or create a system while you're creative minded, it kind of can, go against each other. So when did you finally settle on the yoga piece, to the alignment piece, to supporting some of your dad's equipment, to making it your own?
Right. Good question. As I mentioned, I was growing up and I was applying my dad's tubing and jumping rope and all of his stuff into my personal working out. And it worked really well. So when I get out to LA, I was still doing that stuff like crazy with all my athletes. In 1990, I went through the National Academy of Sports Medicine course and I got second highest score in the course. And so they asked me to come back and be a teacher of the very stuff that I had developed. And so I was doing that and I was implementing that more into how I was training my athletes. So I had a synergy of baseline alignment positions. So what they would teach was, okay, if you're doing a bench press, let's say, here's the right position. It's not like this, right? We'd have shoulders down, shoulders back. When you press it, your arms are extended, blah, blah, blah. They would give me a template for what was exactly what we're trying to achieve. So I would take that and I'd be like, okay, so this is where we want to be, right? So then when I met Roger Eisen, it was years later. So the question is, why did I start with Roger? Because I had a template of sound positioning. So on machines, on barbells, dumbbells, I had beginning and of movement, or beginning and end of a movement, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what happened was I was obsessed with jumping. I went from 25 to 47 inches on one leg jumps. I was a one-legged jumper. I always took off my left leg. I almost never jumped off my right leg. So what happens is you start to create this imbalance and your one leg starts to get overused and you start to create a compensation pattern. And all of a sudden stuff started breaking down on me. And I had an 1.5 inch rotation in my spine. My ribs literally detached. 2 of my ribs detached off my spine while I was running up and down the court. No one touched me. They just popped off. Then I blew my left knee out. I just had a massive amount of injuries occur. And so then I'm trying to fix myself while I'm out in LA and nothing was working. I did this in 94. I continued teaching for NASM. And even though physically I was broken down. So then when in 97, I decided to move back to Madison, Wisconsin, because I had a bunch of ideas like the power wheel and power push-up and stuff in my head that I wanted to develop. And I couldn't do them out in Los Angeles.
Right.
My dad and his Lifeline USA company had a plant. I could develop them back there. So I moved back to Madison, started making those products. And my friend was a strength coach at Wisconsin. So I went in there. He said, yeah, you can train in here. And he saw me hobbling around and he's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Right. And I was like, yeah, I hurt my knee. I blew my knee out and I don't want to get surgery. I tore my patella 85% through. I had almost, I didn't fully tear, but I tore my ACL, not fully though. I tore my meniscus really bad. And so I was hobbling, my back and knee, everything was jacked up. So he said, you need to go see my friend, Roger Eisen. And after he hit me over the head about 50 times to go do that, I'm hard-headed.
Aren't we all?
So he keeps seeing me hobble and he goes, God dang it, you better go in there. And I was like, okay, I'll go see him. And so I go see him and it was literally like Ralph Macchio meeting Mr. Miyagi. When I met Roger, like you have to understand at this point, I'm a head instructor for NASM. My clients in LA are Woody Harrelson. I had trained Bruce Springsteen, Bruce Willis, Demi Moore. The athletes were Shawn Kemp, Darryl Strawberry, Eric Davis, Gary Sheffield, Anthony Hardaway.
Unbelievable.
It was an insane line. Oh, and then the LA Clippers too.
Yeah. Wow.
So I had about as big time resume of clients that I could have. And then I'm a head instructor traveling all over the world and speaking on functional stability training. So I literally was at this point in my life where I was like, well, you can't tell me anything, but oh yeah, I have a knee issue that my back hurts every day and it takes me 15 minutes to get out of bed. But besides that, I am the man. So you can see how insane that is. And within 2 minutes of meeting Roger, I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything. This dude is crushing me right now.
Right.
He was like, your back hurts? Let me see you do this. Get down in this position. Put your hands overhead.
Yeah.
Try to lower your ribs. Work your tailbone down. Lift your knee 1 inch off the ground. Try and straighten your back knee. He just put me into a front warrior position, which is like a lunge position. I couldn't do it. I was failing miserably. And then he said, okay, now switch legs. I failed even worse on the other side. And he was like, okay, get on your back. You know, supine bridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he had me do supine bridge. He pushed on my hips and I got up and I was like, oh my God, my hips feel so much better. And so then I was like curious. I was like, what the hell did you just do? And he goes, just do this. It'll heal your back. Your knees will feel great. So after 1 month, I had no more knee or back pain. And it blew my mind. And all he had me do was one pose every single day because I lacked patience so bad. He realized I couldn't do a full hour class because I would lose my mind. So he probably would lose his mind teaching me over an hour because I couldn't stay in a pose. But it blew my mind. So then I realized, wow, there's a lot more to this than just my stuff with my dad's equipment and training the athletes. Athletes all have these misalignments. All of them have these injuries. And so I said to Roger, hey, Roger, is it cool with you if I combine your positioning with my body weight plus cable exercises or plus weight or whatever? And he goes, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. So what I did was I thought of all the feedback, because the difference with Roger's Aishin's yoga wasn't just you do a pose and the instructor says, okay, feel the flow, feel the energy. It's not like kumbaya type at all.
Right.
It's hands-on. You're constantly like pushing the neck, like we put our fingers here. This is actually works really well showing this. So when a person's like, you put your hands on the chin and on the shoulders, and we literally go like this. Push against the shoulders, and what it does, it creates a longer neck, sets the shoulders, retracts the shoulders, right? And we do that on every single position: a push-up, a pull-up, a squat, an overhead squat, a deadlift, whatever, a lunge. And we give feedback, and that was the difference, what I saw and how I used to train, because I had no feedback, so I'd make compensation patterns like crazy.
Yep.
And I kept doing it, and what we want to be. So at least now I can close the gap in a balanced positioning. And as soon as I got that figured out, then instead of going into an exercise and then coming out of it and being like, whoa, like my shoulders and chest, like if you do a lot of push-ups, you tend to roll the shoulders and you feel that tightness in the front. But if you do it right, your shoulders are retracted and you feel your upper back after you do a push-up, and that's totally different.
Yes.
And so then you get out of it and you're like, oh my God, I feel balanced and I'm working my alignment and I'm getting stronger. That's what I want.
And I got to experience that myself. And that's what was kind of the big takeaway for me, is coming from injuries, coming from neurological disorders. I mean, I showed up to my first CNT a couple years removed from a back surgery that ended my collegiate tennis career, where they found a tumor in my spinal canal. And I remember trying to come back from that, having numbness in my pelvis, having a lot of sciatica down my left leg. And it was supine bridge that completely changed the game for me, because as you know, tennis being such a quad dominant sport, forces you, as you engage and have that feedback, especially on the shins, to engage hamstrings and glutes and essentially turn off those big muscle activators and fire the intrinsic muscle fibers. And it puts you into that alignment to where you get up. It's almost like this tingling, this, you know, you feel better rather than feel worse after workout. And there was that one day, and I know that we broke up the CNT into a week, but there was that one day where I think we primarily just focused on Aishin's yoga. And I kind of went into it being like, wait, there's not going to be no weights with this. Like, oh, this is going to be pretty easy. And that feedback partner feedback especially is just extraordinary. And to pay it forward, and I know we were able to talk about this over the last few years, is I had a young lady that survived 5 brain tumors. She had 5 surgeries all before the age of 8 years old, and still wanted to play high school tennis. And the last surgery, the tumor was close to her cerebellum. They got a piece of her cerebellum, caused atrophy on her right side, and she no longer could swing a tennis racket. So it was Aishin's yoga, John, to where I was able to actually teach her with her left hand to go a cross-handed forehand and be 2 hands on both sides, but neurologically retrain her body to kind of mask some of those deficiencies, to retrain her body based off of what her body will allow her to do.
Exactly.
But the activation doesn't happen without the awareness of the feedback that you implemented. So I wanted to get your thoughts on just the injury prevention and the rehabilitation side of what you took away from that experience.
It was profound. And the more that we worked with other people like you, Jeff, all the people, thousands of people that took the CMT courses, it was the more we taught, the more we learned, because everybody's so different physically, but it's about getting people in the right position and then helping them to activate the right muscles to create a positive outcome. So that was one thing. Like, I knew my stuff that I had to work on to create a release in my hips and help my back start to move. But then it was shoulders, neck, everything. And you start to see in other people, that person has the same thing as I do. I'll do that one. I'll get this type of feedback, and then it works. And then that's what we noticed at the courses, that, and we could group people really well who had similar issues so that they can work with somebody that has exact same back, knee, hip issue. And so they get an understanding of it. And that is something that today, Coleman, is really needed. And this is the whole gist of what Jesse and I do now, is we teach people, and we're about to launch a lot of the things that we're talking about. We might open another facility again someday, but it's going to be all about the same tenets that we did at the original Monkey Bar Gym, where we had partner feedback. You must give feedback to another person, and then they give it back to you to challenge each other up constantly.
Yes.
And it just works. And Jesse and I talk about this all the time, especially nowadays. We're so disconnected. People are so connected to AI, computers, laptops, everything. And intrinsically, we want to communicate. We want to connect with other people. And we're seeing as evidence that connecting to a laptop or a phone does not do the same things that person to person does. And what a great opportunity it is to step back and go back to what we did originally. At the original point of the Monkey Bar Gym was to help people and planet, and the logos working together are meaning people helping people. And if we do that, we can really start people to start to build more self-confidence in themselves, and then they can start play it forward to other people as well. And that just makes better people, better planet.
No, I mean, that's just so well said. And, you know, with COVID and a lot of the things that the world for a period of time forced us to do, as much as, you know, even all today, we're connecting on a virtual call, but you know, you and I both know that there's synergy and there's so much, you know, power that happens when people are in community, and that community strength and camaraderie resonates significant with me in my coaching background, because I love leading teams. I love seeing people help one another, because when you try to do this life on your own, there's only so many things that you can do. And to have others help you shoulder the weight, whether physically in a workout or in your life, I think that there's a lot of things that you resonated with in your path that gave you and Jessica that foundation, that driving force to want to pay it forward.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, going back to your creative mindset, man. I mean, listen, you were a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, that is something that is, again, kind of an out of the box thing. And as I started studying more about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and connecting the dots, I believe that it is something where, you know, in tennis, there's so many multi-directional movements. It's not linear by any stretch of the imagination. So I'd love for you to walk the listeners through that experience that you had in your training and why you went after it in the first place.
Sure. My dad was a pro boxer. I grew up stand-up fighting. I did some Muay Thai as well. When I moved out to LA, I went to Guru Dan Inosanto's academy. He was Bruce Lee's top student.
Right.
And so I started training there, and right away I learned about grappling. And this is before any of the UFCs ever came about. And I ran into this guy named Eric Paulson, and he started to teach me some grappling stuff. And I loved it. I love it because it puts a challenge on you, like all sports do, differently than fitness. And I want to talk about this one single point real quick, is that one of the things that Jesse and I stress all the time in life for everybody is what we term recoil, having the ability to turn around a tough situation. And when we stagnate in life, a tough situation hits us and we can't turn it around. People who are high level, who have been through adversity, have dealt with adversity, have the ability to turn it around quickly.
Right.
So they don't sit there and dwell in the pain or the anguish of a situation. And so we apply this to mind, body, spirit constantly. And so what I always reference is the beauty of doing something physical to help your mind, body, spirit recoil is that you're generally in a safe environment to practice these things. Having recoil, walking down the street and somebody putting a gun to your head, it's not a real good practice to do on a regular basis, because it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
But doing something where, Coleman, let's say you're going to do the X workout today, which okay, this is a tough 10-minute workout. At minute 7, I got to stay focused in order to improve. So right there, you have ability to recoil, because here it comes, minute 7. Okay, stay focused, right? Rather than, oh, it's beating me down, and you quit. Okay, so at that moment, you have a decision. And what we always term in this, when we recoil in a positive direction, that means you're literally making a powerful decision versus making a primal decision, which is I quit. Okay, powerful primal. You have a choice at these moments of challenge. If we train these things in a safe manner, and fitness does this every day, various workouts, a set, a rep can do this, but it's generally a safe environment. Sports, where you have to react to somebody else, you never know when it's going to happen. Coleman, and you and I might be playing tennis now. Just so you guys know, I don't know how to play tennis, so I'm just talking out of the side of my head. Coleman would most likely be beating the hell out of me, but let's say we were even. Right. Let's say we're perfectly even in this sport, and I was up 2-1. And I had beat him, tell me if this is wrong, 6-1, 6-1, right?
Yep.
He right now, because for men, you got to win 3 sets, right?
Right, yep.
So I'm doing pretty good right now.
I'm pretty good, man. Absolutely.
Okay, so if he was down 6-1, 6-1, he's down 2-0. He's got to reframe how he moves forward. If he doesn't, most people, they're like, I can't win 3 sets in a row. And then the match, everything's over. But it has happened. Guys come back 3 sets in a row, they win it. It might be 6-5, 6-5, 6-5, and they win the whole thing. But that is a decision they make at that time to change. And that's why I love sports. Now, the difference between tennis and jiu-jitsu is, in tennis, you miss a shot, they get a point. Jiu-jitsu, you make a mistake, they could put you to sleep or break your arm. Or tap you out in some way. Safe. It's still safe if they tap you out. You have opportunity always in jiu-jitsu to tap out before you get hurt. But it can be harsh. Do you understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the choice there is a little more scary, which I like.
Yep.
I like that because now that builds up my strength.
There's a necessary discomfort that is necessary for you to build that.
Grow.
Yeah,
exactly. Now, boxing is easy even at another level. And then you have MMA. So you can get boxing, you can get knocked out. MMA, you can get knocked out, you can get choked out, or a limb might break. Really hardcore. So and if you're losing in one of those matches, you're more vulnerable to one of those outcomes. So you have to make a stronger decision, because it is easy to go primal in those moments. And you see guys do that all the time in the UFC. They just go here.
Yep.
Or you even see like Jake Paul just fought Diaz, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Now, as a boxer, I boxed my whole life. I love what he's doing, actually, that he's wanting to become a professional. But there were some moments in the fight, he turned his head away. That's a huge no-no. You never do that. That's a big red flag. And that to me is not confident, not focused. Right. And he's only been boxing for a few years, so that's understandable. But that's a big no-no. You should not do that in your fighting. And that's going primal. So that's just mindset coaching. Stay in it. So what if you take the hit? Be looking at your opponent. Don't ever turn your back. Don't ever turn your head like that. Those are things that he's going primal. So I loved jiu-jitsu because it put me in a state where it is the ultimate of love. You're getting challenged to your very essence. And what is that? That's love. And somebody else is doing that too. You know, when you played tennis and you won 6-5, they won 6-5, you won 6-5, they won 6-5. Last game, it's 5-5. You guys are going back.
Yep.
You know,
yeah,
and then somebody finally wins. You most likely give that person a hug at the end of the game. Why?
Right. Yeah, because there's no respect in the battle.
But they brought the most out of you and you brought the most out of them. So that's love. That's a love, 110. That's why in jiu-jitsu, sometimes when we train super hard with somebody at the end, in Brazil, they do this. In America, we don't generally do it, but guys in Brazil, they give a kiss at the end on the cheeks of show of love for your opponent, because when you go all out, they're almost choked you escape, you almost catch them, and it's back and forth like that. It is literally taking you to the very essence of your being. And when you're there, it's really easy to go primal. But yet, because you persevered and you kept attacking, you went powerful and you kept a strong mindset. And that breeds confidence like nothing else for everything in your life, because you know at the very worst situation, you rose rather than you fell.
Yes.
And that is what life is all about. Trained to be powerful, strong, confident. You know, and that comes through repetitions of making that strong decision. And that can't come, I don't think you can do that just by talking about it or reading about it. It can only come through perseverance, through a physical movement pattern. And it works even better when you have to react to another person.
Man, so well said. It makes me want to turn around and blow through this wall behind me right now. Fired up, man. But you know, it also makes me think to tie this all together is I remember your story with your hand pain and some of the things that you were, you know, battling just, you know, as you know, were a strength coach and continuing to push your body. I mean, walking handstands, you know, power wheel. I mean, you were pulling cars. I mean, doing all of this. And listen, I know we're not getting younger anytime soon, but you're doing feats at your age that are just extraordinary. And where I have to just say thank you, and where I am just incredibly humbled, is what you and Jessica taught me about plant-based nutrition. As I have told you in the past, tumors have grown, these schwannoma neurosheath tumors. I had one on my back. I found out a few years back I have a few in my brachial plexus that are not operable, but my doctor says to keep my inflammation down. So I've been incorporating primarily a plant-based diet since I had met you guys, and it's changed my life. I'd love for you to
Good.
share with the listeners a little bit about how the nutrition piece helps
Sure.
with everything that we've talked about.
Sure. So Jesse and I have been plant-based for quite a long time. That is, just so you guys know, it's not vegan, plant-based. You can eat animal products, but generally it's between 80 and 90% plants. So the main thing that we stress to people is eat whole foods. If you're going to have animal products, make it organic as possible, not farm-raised fish, for example, wild caught fish, grass-fed organic meats. Those are much healthier choices than, factory farmed versions of the same thing. So what we try and do is we try and coach people on how to eat whole foods. We honestly tell people, I mean, a vegan 100%, it's not easy to do. I did it for a long time. We did it for about 13, 14 years. It's very challenging to do well. And we have found that teaching that to people, it's challenging to get them to understand how to do it in a way that maintains or gains their lean body mass. So what we've always talked to people about is, and it's funny, we go back to the original hand plan, which was something I started talking about when I first moved out to LA back in 1989. It was just a simple protocol that I made for people. Palm-sized protein. You do that 3 times a day. And a pound for me is different than a pound for you. I'm 220, I'm 6'2", 220. So my palm is pretty big, so I get to eat more than you. Sorry, that's just how it is.
You get to dunk on me, you get to eat more than me, you get to do whatever you want, man.
Yeah. So it's real simple. A fist-sized starch, which might be a half a sweet potato, some rice, baked potato, something like that. And then what I like is at least a bowl size, or if you want to go for a huge bowl of greens, that's all good stuff. But the main point of it is, it's not just having those 3 meals and maybe 2 snacks, but the main thing that we try to teach with the hand plan is get hungry, eat till satisfied, repeat. Get hungry, eat till satisfied. And if you keep it to a bowl size that you're eating out of, palm-sized protein, fist-sized starch, fill the rest with greens, and then eat some good fats in there, coconut oil, olive oil. If you do things like that, you're gonna bring more health and wealth to your body and your mind and your spirit. It's just really the easiest way to go, because if you do it that way, you're gonna get hungry and then you're gonna get satisfied, but you won't overeat a gang of food. It's not gonna be sitting in your gut for long periods, and you're gonna have bolo belly, which we call when you're sitting and you're like, oh my God, my gut.
Right.
We call that bolo belly, and you're not going to get that because you ate enough, but not too much. And the results of when you do this are, you get leaner. It's simple, and you feel great. Your energy is good because you don't put too much stuff in your gut at one time, and you're getting high nutrient foods as well. And that is literally what we're trying to do. We stress, don't have to count calories. You don't have to do macros so much if you just follow the hand plan.
Yeah.
Am I against people counting calories and counting macros? No. Whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you is fine. I just try and get people back to being more intuitive, so we listen rather than take an external source and tell us, oh, I should be doing this, so I got to eat more food right now, even though I'm not hungry. I got to eat more because these guys said that.
Right.
The only reason sometimes I do calorie counting for clients is because they don't have a good connection with how much. So then in those cases, they got to sort of go through a time of re-educating themselves on how to eat the proper amounts of food, then we can wean off that to just be intuitive about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we are what we eat, right? And
Right.
take in and what we're able to put out all coincides. And it leads me to another question that you and I haven't been able to talk about yet, but I see that whoop on your wrist. And one thing that I've been able to get into over these last few years is sauna cold plunge therapy.
Yeah.
And being able to work the circadian rhythm and try to naturally release HGH. And the cold therapy has been a tremendous blessing for me to also help keep inflammation down. So
Yeah, big time for you.
I would love to ask you, man, is outside of the things that you've trained in the CNT, and, you know, what you've done with Monkey Bar, with kind of some of the latest trends that you've been able to do with either recovery or pre-workout. I'd love to hear why you're wearing a Whoop and your thoughts on some of the technology that's out there.
Sure. I'll tell you, 6 years ago, I had a bad accident and I crushed my left hip, my femur, and I tore my labrum, cracked my femur head, and then I also compressed it. So I had a bad accident. That was 6 years ago, and all the doctors said, you need a hip replacement. And I said, nope. Yeah, I know it takes 5 to 7 years to regrow your bone. I don't know if I can ever reattach my labrum, but I can get myself in the most optimal position so it doesn't aggravate me. Because a labrum, I did a lot of education on it, and you can, like a torn meniscus, you can go through the rest of your life and you'll be fine as long as you're in the right positioning. So I believe the same is true with my labrum and my hip. And so over the last 6 years, because that happened for me, I've taken an even deeper dive into alignment, recovery, reduction of inflammation than I had previously. And so you doing the hot cold, fantastic. That's hands down my number one protocol for people to do. My favorite is 2 to 3 minutes ice bath, ice cold water, followed by 5 minutes of dry sauna. Repeat that anywhere from 5 to 7 times. If you have the luxury of having a dry sauna and a wet sauna, alternate those with the cold bath.
Gotcha. And the timing of it, John, based off of what your body's doing in the morning, I believe at 4 a.m., it's starting to wake up, it's starting to heat up. And that's the best time to optimally drop it with a cold plunge. And then in the evenings after 4 p.m., your body's starting to cool down or wind down. That's sometimes the optimal time to throw in the sauna. Do you have the timing of the day that is better for one or another? It doesn't matter. Yeah.
No, I love that, Coleman.
Okay, cool.
You just are educating me on that. I've never heard that before.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I like to listen to different folk. And there's some really knowledgeable people out there, but just because somebody read it in a book, just because somebody's done a study on it, does not mean it's factual. So as I mentioned earlier to you, and when you and I were talking about it, I wasn't good in school, as you can tell with my English. I struggled with school. So knowledge for me came through attrition. I had to do to figure stuff out. Like my jump training, I had to figure out how to jump high. So I had to figure out how to get a full recovery from a really intensive training protocol. I've never heard that, what you just said, but I've done so much cold plunge and so much heat work. And I've done a whole bunch of different variations of it. And hands down, the best thing that I ever found was dry sauna 5, cold plunge 2, wet sauna 5, cold plunge 2. Repeat that whole thing 3 times, and you generally feel 100% recovered.
Wow.
Now that's hands down my favorite.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is a session of one or the other, in contrast to where your body is regulating at that time. If it's hot, hit the cold plunge. If it's cold, hit the heat, and those set you up for waking up more in the morning and set you up for calming down in the evening. I totally get those. what I always tell people is try it out. If it works for you, like Bruce Lee says, keep it. If it doesn't work for you, then negate it and try something else though. Tony Robbins, a guy I was fortunate to work with for a while, he used to say that all the time, is that, you know, we have to try stuff out and find if it works for us. And if it doesn't work, but you got to try something different, because the goal is to find a path that works.
Yeah.
So Coleman, and you've heard me talk many times about primal and powerful decisions. That I got from David Bayer, a guy that I'm fortunate enough to work with right now. David is fantastic, and he and I work with each other. I help him in the physical realm, and he helps me in the mental realm as well. He's fantastic. And these things that we're talking about and figuring out a patterning is something that I do with him, for him, is to try and create that lifestyle that reduces inflammation, that raises HRV. Whoop, I think, is the best wearable that gives you the best feedback and the best information that you can then rate how you did the night before, the day before, to give you a more positive outcome so you can learn.
Right.
Now, the thing is about Whoop is it's like, to me, counting calories.
Yep.
Do you need it? No. You know when you're tired. Just that most of us are such rockheads, we don't listen. We know we're tired, but Coleman said, John, do that workout today. Okay, well, Coleman said it, so therefore I'm going to go run a marathon today, even though I feel tired, even though I know I think I didn't sleep too well last night and I'm really tired. So the thing is about Whoop, it's a backup plan that it can be forefront for a person to start to learn about methodologies to improve your HRV, because HRV is hands down the one thing you want to work to improve. It's improved by resting, sleeping better, getting your heart rate lower, which is improved by doing proper conditioning, strength training. All of these different variables help you get a better C-score, and Whoop reads it really well. It is one wearable.
Yeah, I got my Oura ring on. You know, I definitely tap into it as well. And I think it's kind of interesting because maybe some of these technologies, John, would you say that it's kind of in the realm of self-feedback, being able to kind of articulate information with what you're doing each and every day and putting the two together to try to come to a common conclusion of why it's happening, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But what I like getting back to is I wear this because I wanted to sleep better. I wanted to double my HRV. I am trying to have as healthy and long and strong life as possible. So this gives me great data. But every single day, I also try to listen. Like with nutrition, I listen. With my workouts, I listen. With my recovery, I listen to, do I feel like training or do I not feel like training? Then I'll look at my Whoop and say, yeah, I was correct, or I was not correct. I did not recover that well. You know, so it's good backup, so that what you were just saying is you can start to learn, am I right in my intuition or was I off on this one? And it is a good wearable. Your Oura ring is a good wearable. There's other ones, one called Welltory, which you don't have to wear. It's a free app that you can literally, you put your finger on your phone like this, and it takes your HRV in the moment.
Oh, wow.
It takes about a minute to do the test, a little more, and it gives you all the exact data points that a Whoop or Oura ring would give you, but you don't have to wear it. And I love that because I take it at night and I take it in the morning, and then I have something to compare my Whoop to as well.
Absolutely. That's really powerful. And it's fun for me to kind of continue to learn and be educated by you, because there is a lot of things that have taken place in the technology industry and in the fitness world since we had crossed paths. And I think it's tremendous with the sonic cold plunge feedback. And I know the listeners are going to benefit from that as well. And I got a couple more for you here, John. You know, you've helped a ton of athletes, a ton of clients. And I've shared a few testimonies of people that you've indirectly impacted by mentoring me, by helping me to help others. And as I've shared some of those stories, I'd love for you to share maybe one female, one male that comes to mind when it comes to all the people you've worked with, that you can tell me a little bit about, just a heroic testimony from how they showed up when you first met them to how they left when you started working with them for a little bit.
Okay. My wife, Jessie, day one, I met her, we connected, and we started dating outside the gym. She had never been to the gym. We met at the gym. I had a hip hop party and it was awesome. And that's where we met. So we started dating, and she was not really healthy. And so I didn't want to be a jerk and say, gosh, you're super out of shape or anything like that, because that would not have probably helped the relationship.
Right. Instant friends.
So, so I said, okay, how can I do this so it's not offensive? And so that perhaps I can get her to start to work out without feeling like she's not good in any way. So I said, hey, hon, would you like to I'm doing a 60-day challenge at the gym. Would you like to participate in it? And she goes, yeah, sure. So I said, okay, we'll take pictures. I do body fat. We do a couple physical tests. She goes, okay, great. Took her body fat. She was 36.5% body fat. So if you guys don't know that, she was roughly 150 pounds, carrying about 50 some pounds of body fat, about 53 pounds of body fat. So her lean body mass was around 97 pounds. Okay. Not great. All right. When we started doing her test, one of her first tests was a simple body row. I knew she couldn't do a pull-up or a chin-up. So I had her do a body row. It's with my jungle gym. You lay on your back and you row to your chest and go back up. She could do 4. Okay. And then she stopped. I had her do knee push-ups. She did 4 before she broke form. And so these were some of her starting points. Not great, but she had markers. So one of the things that I love about Jessie is that she has a warrior spirit. And when we were talking about that earlier, I only believe people get a warrior spirit through one of 3 ways. Tough childhood, you grew up fighting somehow, or you played some contact sports, or all 3. Jessie had all 3. People that don't have any of those things generally don't have their warrior spirit developed, not meaning they can't develop it, but it's harder. And that's generally the difference between non-athletes and athletes. Right. So one day in class, soon after, she was doing some body rows and she stopped at 4. And I said, why'd you stop at 4? Because I was watching her, and she goes, because I was done. And Jessie has just a little bit of attitude when she started working out with me. And so I said, okay, go until I tell you you're done. And it worked exactly how I wanted, because she got mad. Right. 24 reps later, I said, okay, now you can stop. And then she looked, her eyes popped open. She goes, oh, that was different. And she goes, is that how I'm supposed to train all the time? I was like, that's how you train all the time if you want to be great. And she goes, oh my God, that's totally different. That's totally different. And in the next 6 months, she transformed to unbelievable levels. She is now insane. She got in phenomenal shape. Her body fat percentage is now she's dropped about 20% body fat. She's like 16% body fat. Her lean body mass is like damn near 120 pounds. And she's just in phenomenal shape. And
she was an absolute beast at those CNTs, John. I mean, her intensity, just the bright light that she is, man, is unprecedented. And for me, it's fun to hear where the journey started. And that's such an important lesson for the listeners, is if you're doing 4 reps, I'm a big guy, a fan of David Goggins, right? Like once you get to that threshold of where you're actually at, you're only 30% of the way there. So
Yeah.
70% pass that you pushed her to get her to those additional reps, I think it really resonates with me. So I'd love to hear outside of that, a male that comes to mind.
Sure. A kid in Chicago, his name was Beto. Beto came into Chicago Monkey Bar Gym weighing 300, I believe 325 pounds. And he was not obviously in shape at all. And so one of the things about the Monkey Bar Gym is I don't care if you're out of shape, there's a level for you. And so on a workout that called for jumping rope, I said, Beto, you're going to grab this invisible jump rope. So you're just going to pretend like you have a jump rope and start jumping rope. Your feet will never leave the ground, but I want you to do crossover side to side. The beauty is you can't miss. So he started doing that. And I talked to him about how to eat. And then I talked to him about staying consistent on his training and finding a level no matter what it is. A workout might have crawling across the floor, power wheel crawls, and jumping rope. What I had him do is invisible jump rope and crawl on his hands and knees.
Yep.
And he got it. He got both exercises. That built confidence. That starts the ball moving forward. Within a year, I believe a little over a year at the gym, he was under 200 pounds for the first time in a long time in his life. He was doing jump rope doubles. He was doing power wheel crawl like a king. It was a perfect example of giving somebody a challenge at the level that they're at with simple progressions so that they stay part of the group, part of the team. And the whole mindset of everybody, people helping people there, everybody was encouraging him, but I expected him to encourage others through inspiration and through not just him, everybody giving feedback to him, but he had to give it to other people as well. Yeah. But it was reciprocal. And that's called mirror inspiration, which I got from my boy Zeph of the Barbarians. Yes. And when watching somebody, you are inspired, but they also inspire you, but you can inspire them by giving your heart to something. And that's called mirror inspiration. That's what Zeph termed that. And Beto was doing that in spades. And it's just a really great story of perseverance, building confidence.
Man, so powerful. And, again, it goes back to the why. I believe that any why established can overcome any how. Yeah. And I'm so appreciative of the kind words that you've given to me, both by being a student of yours and being able to share my testimony. But I got a final statement here with a question, and I just want you to hear me out. And I'm going to be real is, the Built to Be journey for me has kind of birthed from the ashes. You talked about, overcoming difficult situations, being a fighter, being in contact sport. I checked 2 of the boxes. And, honestly, I got to a point when I was 16 years old, I really wanted to wave the white flag and say, I'm done. And I got to a point of vulnerability where I just didn't want anybody getting through that to ever have to feel the way that I did. So I decided to go on mission and take all of this stuff that happened in my life and try to just take one of those negative seeds and put it into the positive seed basket. And over time, it's led to year over year over year of someone thanking me for helping them, someone writing a thank you card, getting invited to a wedding ceremony, getting those unfortunate funeral announcements of people that I've helped. And nonetheless, I think of your journey, John, and I know that recently it's been tough with the loss of your parents and just a lot of, time of probably reflection, but also too with how you grew up and, having friends that you lost tragically and just everything that's happened along the way, right? Like we love hearing the success stories. We love hearing the results, but we're always infatuated with the process. How did it happen? What are the whys behind it? With that said, man, I mean, you've learned a lot in your day. And I would love for you to go back to that 15, 16-year-old Johnny growing up, with your buddies, man. I mean, you had a lot of people you've come across in your life, but knowing what you know now, if you could go back to that 15, 16-year-old self, what advice would you give him?
Um, God, everything's gonna be okay. Fortunately, I had a rough childhood. I was not cared after very much. I was neglected massively.
Mm,
And so one great trait, I do not know where I got it, but I always sought out mentors my whole life because my dad was gone a lot, and he left us multiple times in our lives, and it was a very volatile home life. And so I chose to stay away as much as possible. And I found recluse, I don't know if that's the right word, recluse, in basketball, in
yeah.
a place oddly called the Shell.
Mm,
Isn't that crazy?
yeah, the shell. Wow.
I literally lived in this place from first or second grade. I would go there right after school, stay until they closed at midnight. I did that almost every day of my life. The day after I graduated high school, I moved out of the house. And I did this because I didn't want to be home. But what I learned in those by being down at this place called the Shell is I asked people all the time, how do I get stronger? How do I become better? And I just sought mentors.
Yeah.
And that happened for me when I was younger. When I was older, I don't know if I mentioned to you, I had 7 people die or killed within a year and a half of opening the gym. Lost a child. I went through it a lot in the first year and a half I opened, and I had I had no family or friends near me. So I had no one to rely on.
Yeah.
So at this point, what I did was I was like, okay, I don't have any person, but I do have great people I can look to via books. So all I did was I found books that inspired me to be great, and I read them, and I walked and I read. I would literally walk for 3 to 4 hours a day reading books. I would walk all over Madison. I read books like The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, The Celestine Prophecies,
Mm.
Conversations with God, Buddhism, Zen, everything I could get my hands on. And it was interesting that all things pointed to the exact same, whether it was a book about conversations with God or a Buddhist text or Zen, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, all of them pretty much said the same thing. And that we all have a spirit, and some people may say that's your God. I say we have a spirit, a person, or a feel in our gut. And if we listen to that, that can help us during those hard times. But like doing reps in a gym or like doing reps in a sport that build our confidence, reading text like this reinforces those positive traits as well. And those availed me to making more confident, stronger decisions through the hardest times in my life. And that was 2 different time periods where I lent on actual people, and then I lent on books with the same outcome. I stood rather than fall.
Nah, I mean, that's beautifully said. And I know that I'm proud of you, what you and Jessica are doing, and the impact you've been on my life and Jeff's life and thousands of people's lives. We're all grateful. And as we wrap up, I'd love to know how, as a BTB community, we can support you and the Monkey Bar movement.
Oh, I appreciate that. We have a website, which we have some of our programs on, monkeybargym.com. And Jesse and I coach people. We haven't really told a lot of people, but you can connect with us through our website. And we have an Instagram page, the Monkey Bar Gym, where I've posted a lot of content. And I'm not big into social media, as you might notice. There's not a gang of posts and stuff, but those are the two ways you can get a hold of us if you have questions or you want to evolve your health and wellness and vitality in life.
Absolutely. John Hinds, remarkable story, remarkable man. And thank you again for being on mission and spending some time with me on the B2B project.
Thank you so much, Coleman. I really appreciate what you're doing, my friend, and I look forward to talking to you more.
Excellent, man.